It's a jack of all trades and a master of none.
And the people at Nikon and Fuji must be high-fiving each other right now, because this thing is an abysmal failure.
But I'm a little disappointed. I'll take that back. I'm a lot disappointed.
How's it going? I'm a normal person, and I've been watching these 5D Mark IV reviews come out over the last couple days since the official release from Canon. Kind of a little upset with what people have to say. I feel like there's not an honest kind of portrayal of the information for the everyday normal person with a normal working budget who works for a living. So I made some notes as usual, and I want to talk about the 5D Mark IV from a normal person's perspective and talk about some of the things that people are talking about out there and why I don't think that they really mattered to a person like me. And basically the quintessence of this argument is why I pre-ordered 5D Mark IV, why I've been waiting for it, and why I'm really happy with the results. So I'll just go down the list. I want to start off with the Silver Fox Tony Northrup. I liked his video a lot. I thought he gave a lot more information than just the bullet points of the, the press release and what was in it. But a couple of things he said just actually was the inspiration for this short little video, because the mindset of some of the photographers that are reviewing this camera are people that are shooting with 5DSRs, or shooting with 1DXs, or shooting with the Nikon D5s, like whatever, all kinds of large cameras that are almost double the price, and also their interpretation of the video sides of this camera and how they relate to the working industry doesn't really connect with reality. So one of the things that really stood out to me that was said is that professional videographers would never use this camera.
Talking about the 4K video. They're pitching this as a camera for filmmakers, and I'm not sure that any filmmaker would actually want this. I know I don't think I could recommend it as the camera of choice to people who are serious about filmmaking.
Well, of course not. It's not designed for them. And that really kind of comes back to the point of who this camera is designed for. If you put it up against other cameras like the 1DX, and more importantly, the A7s Mark II. So let's look at those. The 1DX is double the cost of this camera. It has some amazing features in it. It's specifically designed for a certain working professional to achieve a professional result in a lot of different situations, but it still has a crop on the 4K, and that's, again, I don't think people really understand the fact of a crop on a 4K.
As a side note, the 1DX Mark II and 1DC have a different pixel size than the 5D Mark IV. So the 4K field of view will be different on the 5D Mark IV than those two cameras, even if they're all shot at the same focal length.
So just visually to illustrate how much of a crop the 1.7x is, the white box on there is the crop that you would get out of a 1DX Mark II, the high-end camera.
The 4K movie area is 4096 by 2160, and this is recorded off exactly this area within the full image sensor.
A sensor in a camera is bigger than 4K, so there's going to be a crop. I mean, there's ways to get around it, but it's just technical data. A little bit of a crop either way. We'll get back to that. So the 1DX has more two-digit processors instead of one, less of a crop on the 4K. It's a double the price. It's a $6,000 camera. So I don't really think that it's fair to compare that camera to a 5D 4. It's just not really the same. As far as the A7s Mark II, I mean, that is a viable competitor against the 5D3, and it does have some features that people think they want, and maybe they do want. To me, those features aren't as important, and what's more important to me and why I stay away from the A7s Mark II is because of the build quality. I think it feels cheap. It overheats when it first came out. Yeah, I know there's a firmware update for that, but the difference between that camera and a Sony, the Sony camera and the Canon, is that Canon cameras work. I've never had to worry about an overheating issue or get a firmware update where my cameras need to not overheat in the middle of a shoot anymore. To have a camera that overheats, even with the possibility of overheating, is just completely unacceptable. So I also think Sony's have a plasticky look. They cheat green. I think they're cheap cameras. I think it's a ploy from Sony to force people to future-proof us into 4K TVs. I don't think they're worth it. They're great cameras. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they're a Canon system. I'm a little bit of a Canon fanboy. All right, yeah, got it. All right, next thing he said is, why would I go from a 5DSR to a Mark IV?
See a huge drop in performance if you were to go from the 5DSR down to the 5D Mark IV. And that creates a real conflict for us personally because we love the 5 DSLR and I don't think I can give up that much detail. I just don't know that I can bring myself to do it, even though there are lots of things that make me want the 5D Mark IV.
I don't know. Why would you? Why would you even consider it? And again, this is the kind of mentality where people are like, oh, well, I have a 1DX too. I have a 5 DSLR. Why would, again, this camera isn't designed for you. You know who this camera is designed for? It's people like me who aren't going from even a 5D3 to a 5D4. Someone who's going from a crop sensor to a 5D4. I've been waiting for this camera to go to a full frame camera for about 1.5 years because I've been watching all these other full frame cameras come out and just, I'm like, no, I'm gonna wait for the 4. I'm gonna wait for the 4. And I'm glad that I did. So we'll get more into that. So I don't think that people understand that the 5D Mark IV is not to bring people who have higher end cameras backwards. That's kind of silly. You guys have already invested, you already have the money, you're already professionals, you have the high end cameras that you need. A professional filmmaker is going to use a C100 or a C300 or an RE or something. I mean, again, this is a preposterous statement that's just kind of like, whatever, you get it. All right, so here's the things that people are bitching about, and this is kind of my response to them. So the first thing people are bitching about is the dual pixel RAW. So this is like a huge gift in photography from Canon to photographers. And they're saying, hey, if you miss your focus point because you suck, here's a way you can fix that. And this happens again in wedding photography, sports photography all the time. Camera picks something close to the eye, the nose, eyelashes, whatever, that isn't the eye, and you can actually make micro fine-tune adjustments. So people are bitching about this because it's only achievable right now in Canon's photo software. So no third-party software has ever been created to adapt to a piece of technological advance from a camera, really. You don't think that Lightroom and Adobe is going to integrate this into their programs pretty quickly, and there will definitely be a way to utilize that correction for dual pixel RAW in third-party systems. Come on, I mean, yeah, it's not out today, but give it a little bit of time, it'll be out. Cards. Okay, so this is one of two things that I'm kind of unhappy about, but at the same time I want to just keep the reality of what's going on. So they kept the CF and the SD cards, and UH1, not UH3. So this isn't a great idea. I'm kind of bitching with people on this, but at the same time, what I think is great about this is that we don't have to reinvest and buy all new cards. I can use the cards that I have. Great, awesome. If it's going to get the job done, why do I need the most expensive, newest card? I need something that's going to work and work reliably. Which gets me to the next thing. Ooh, that it doesn't have, I mean, these aren't in any particular order. Focus peaking and zebra stripes. So there's a little bit of back and forth. People aren't really sure if there's focus peaking or zebra stripes. I don't think there's going to be. And the reason I don't think it's going to be is because Canon's not going to put something in a camera that doesn't work. So if you look at something like the A7s Mark II, I shoot with it all the time. Even though I don't like it, it's one of the jobs I'm on, that's what they use. The focus peaking is basically worthless. It's more inclined to tell you what's overexposed than what's actually in focus. I don't care what color the dots are. If you change the color, whatever, it's still not really showing you. And I've had to adapt the shooting style when using the A7s Mark II. They call it the wonk, right? I hit a shot for a few seconds, 5-10 seconds, and then just to make sure, I turn the focus ring a little bit in each direction and get an additional 10 seconds with a little bit of different focal point, because the screen on the back of the A7 Mark II is a joke, and I've had to rent the little mini HD monitors to actually shoot with it because I can't really see what's going on in that monitor, and I've learned not to trust those focus peaking points because it's killed me before. One time I went out for a shoot, came back and the director's like, why is all this stuff out of focus? And I was like, I thought it was in focus because the focus peaking told me it was in focus. No, it's just bad focus peaking. So if they didn't put it in, it's probably because it doesn't work. Okay. The crop. All right, so we discussed the crop briefly. 1.7 crop. Again, the sensor is 30 megapixels, so that's a certain size. 4K smaller than that, it's going to be a crop. 1.7 is a heavy crop, but let's talk about that. So how many situations are you going to be in that you're going to need to shoot 4K in a tight situation where you're going to need a wide angle that you're going to be that close? There's going to be some, definitely. And again, is a 16 to 35 going to work? Because a 16 at a 1.7 crop's about 28 millimeters. So I looked online, talked to some people. A Tokina 11 to 16 is about $450. At 11 millimeters, it'll give you at least 18 millimeter shot, which on a full frame normally is fantastic. 18 millimeters just in general is a nice wide shot. You really shouldn't need much more than that. And if that's the case, then maybe you need a different kind of camera for that shot. But for the other 97% of your shots where you don't have a wall behind you or a lake and you can move back a few feet, the 1.7 crop really isn't going to affect you that much. Not going to affect me that much. I just bought a wide lens, and for those few shots I'll use that wide lens, but on everything else I should be fine. Not to mention that I don't shoot that much 4K. It's there as a novelty. It's there if I need it. It's there if a client requires 4K. It future-proofs the camera a little bit. But again, I work in the industry every day, and generally people are still making HD products and putting out HD products. Most people don't have 4K TVs. Yeah, and so I don't think it's really that important. All right, so trying to wrap this up. I know what's going on. Okay, the codecs, H.264 versus H.265. This is, again, one of those things that's not great about the camera. You're not going to get everything in a $3,500 camera. You're not going to get every feature. Why would Canon do this? So here's my thought process. I don't know this. This is a guess. It's an estimate, but it's, I think, a pretty logical one. If you look at the updates that just came out to the 1DX Mark II, as the 5D4 was released, you see huge advancements in the workflow speed of that camera. So there's probably a group of people who were waiting on the 1DX to see what the 5D4 would release, and then in this period of limbo was like, that's not good enough for me, I'll go to the 1DX. Or they said, oh, that's what I need, I'll go with the 5D4. I have a feeling that a short period after this camera's been released, they're going to release a firmware update that's going to help that file size a little bit. I think leaving it in this kind of bad position right now forced a few people who weren't happy with the specs to jump to the 1DX too, and I think it's just a ploy. I mean, I think we'll get better file sizes and some kind of codec update, some kind of firmware update in the future. That's just me. 7 frames per second, people are, really? You're bitching about 7 frames per second? They're like, oh, well, the 1DX and that 5D3 had 6, 5D4 has 7. Got better frame rate. If you need more than 7 frames per second, then you probably are shooting wildlife or sports or something. And if you're doing it and you need more than, you're getting paid for it. So don't bitch about 7 frames per second. Yeah. So, you know what this camera reminds me of? It reminds me of Final Cut 10 when it came out. Final Cut 10 came out with a bunch of new stuff that people weren't familiar with, and they were like, oh my god, this program's crap, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this. And while it was a little rough when it came out, guess what program everyone's using now and is loving because of its advancements in its workflow, its advancements in the ability to adapt to a changing media environment. And what I use every day, and it brings in the bucks. So again, the difference for me is this camera is going to work. I don't have it in my sweaty little hands yet, but I'll have it very soon. I pre-ordered one of the first versions as fast as I could. I saved up for this, but again, let's not forget the good points. Improved build, better sensor, Wi-Fi, GPS, improved video abilities, improved photo abilities, third-party APS-C lenses in 4K, same batteries, same cards, touchscreen, DPAF, dual pixel RAW. I'm going from a 70D crop sensor. I'm very excited that the DPAF is going to transfer to the 5D4, wireless GPS, a better sensor. I mean, 4K, it's everything I need. It's everything I know a lot of the people that I work with every day need. On a large budget shoot, we're not going to use, you know what they use 5Ds for on large budget shoots? Crash cameras. I mean, no one's expecting anyone to shoot a $40 million film with a 5D Mark IV. But if you're trying to shoot a $10,000 film, $20,000 film, $40,000 documentary, a $5,000 documentary, no budget documentary, if you have this camera, your ability to shoot a cinematic, beautiful piece of art has just been greatly improved. And price is pretty good. I mean, they're not giving their stuff away. You get what you pay for. It works. So that's my 5D Mark IV review from a normal person. Hope you found it helpful. Hope you buy one. Hope to see you out there shooting. Talk to you later.